And my name is Michael Nemeth, and thanks all of you for joining. I'm hoping that your conference is going well, and that this is will be another positive addition. I'll share my screen. There. All right, so you should be able to see that. And let me know if you're missing anything. I'm trying to see if I can turn back on the view of the participants. No, I guess I didn't learn how to do that. All right, no worries. Well, yes, so this breakout session will be on sustainable, just, and healthy energy systems, and feel free to unmute and share your thoughts and ask questions. It's meant to be an interactive session to get into the details of some of the things that you've been exploring throughout the conference so far. And so thank you to the Public Health Association of BC and all organizers for the opportunity to present this breakout session. As I said, my name is Michael Nemeth. I live in Saskatoon at Radiance Cohousing. It's a passive house townhouse development that I helped develop along with an amazing group of people, including Wanda Martin, who you may know. I'm a mechanical engineer, and I now help design passive house buildings across Canada with my business, Bright Buildings. Our homes at Radiance are designed to use 1/10 of the space heating of an average Canadian home. This huge energy savings is due to continuous thick insulation, high performance windows, simple airtight construction, and heat recovery ventilation. And all it costs an extra 6% to build, and it offers a reduced monthly cost of ownership over conventional construction. So there's much to learn to redevelop functional, sustainable energy systems for our communities and for our planet. In this breakout session, I'd like you to offer a list of top concepts that I hope you can take and build on and determine what implications our future sustainable communities, energy and food systems will have on public health and personal action. So some of those items are shown here on the screen, and that includes passive house, net zero in terms of buildings, in terms of energy, carbon. Net zero is just generally a very important concept that we can work with. Energy sprung is a concept out of the Netherlands coming out right now that combines net zero and sustainable and affordable housing, and getting that available to people and getting the financing working. And we move into equity and energy poverty with that, and making sure that we have access to everyone the best technology we have for saving energy, and we're not leaving those who are the most vulnerable with the least efficient buildings. At the same time, we're concerned with indoor air quality, and this is one of the major health impacts, or direct health aspects of buildings. And so we ensure that we have continuous ventilation, it's filtered, we're regulating humidity, CO2 concentration, and filtering out particulates. We're also bringing in heat pumps in a lot of buildings so that we can electrify efficiently heating systems and actually provide cooling systems in one product or one piece of equipment, both heating and cooling, offering advantages to, particularly in affordable housing situations where many situations they're not permitted to have cooling because of modesty requirements. And now we have a warming climate where our buildings aren't designed for. So cooling and heat pumps there's many interconnected aspects, I think, there. PACE financing is an important clean energy financing strategy. Co-housing, where I live, and as a development model, it's an amazing collaborative and participative housing development approach that can be repeated many times. Just getting more community ownership and collective ownership. I could also note about community plans and renewable energy cooperatives. I'm the vice president of the SES Solar Co-op here in Saskatoon, and so we develop solar projects with community investment. I'm do some work with Passive House Canada and with their education programs, and so they, that's also very important, is education and environmental education and understanding why we're doing things, and also professional training. I have a bit on waste and remanufacturing, although I think I want to focus on energy systems. And so the last items I want to tick off are green and blue hydrogen, electric vehicles, power to gas, and just what are the next steps in decarbonizing our industries that are hard to decarbonize. How can we one day go to a conference in person again and take a climate neutral jet, or a fuel that's made from renewable energy. So don't have a lot of time left, but so for example, the U.S. put out their net zero. Portions of Congress put out a report on how they would get to net zero by 2050. They lean heavily on clean hydrogen, green hydrogen, and zero emissions vehicles, and building energy retrofits. Passive House, it's a lot more popular in BC, but it's taking up interest throughout Canada and throughout the world. Of course, it's originated in Passive House standard originated in Germany, though it has roots throughout the world. We're talking about insulating buildings and making them use very little energy in the first place, so that renewable energy can meet their demands or their energy needs. And so in Radiance Cohousing, we looked at the investment in insulation and saw that it would reduce monthly cost of ownership over conventional construction while also maintaining a more resilient building. Property assessed clean energy financing is recognizing that and is going to start allowing that happen on a very large scale, allowing homeowners or business owners to invest in their buildings without having to dip into their own funds that they're using for operations and other things. This is an example in Regina, Souls Harbour Rescue Mission that built a near passive house building for an emergency shelter and transitional housing. With that design, we're able to achieve zero incremental cost. The investment in the building envelope, better windows and insulation meant we could save huge amounts on the mechanical system. So we're trying to find win-wins and ways that we can get this for free and ways we can just build better. And of course, designing with ventilation, with heat recovery means that we're constantly bringing in fresh air. We're not sealing these buildings off and letting them go stagnant. Obviously, we can't have thick building syndrome. And so these approaches mean we actually have better fresh air in many buildings. We can monitor that with indoor air quality monitoring. And I already touched on heat pumps, but there's a lot of advantages there. And when we add renewables, we kind of top it all off. And I mentioned green hydrogen being energy stored from renewables in the form of a chemical energy storage method, either hydrogen by splitting water, making hydrogen that we can put into the gas grid, decarbonize the gas grid for power generation, heating, transportation. We can and industry, making steel with hydrogen or renewable methane that could be made from a combination of hydrogen and atmospheric or biomass carbon. And blue hydrogen means that we're still using oil and gas, but we're leaving the carbon in the ground one way or another. And there are some real technologies here that we could seriously look at. So I encourage that. And it could offer a just transition for oil and gas. This is what I'd love to see is agrivoltaics, just an integration of renewables and food production in as many places, as closely integrated into our communities as possible. And with that, I'll turn it over to you to think about and consider these questions and discuss the key implications for public health and personal action. Who are the unusual allies we may need to work with? What areas do you see as most important, and what concepts that are not central, but we should also bring along and need to be supported? Okay, so go back to the top and turn my video back on. Let's see. Diana, are you prepared to take notes? We're going to collect all these notes and yep. And share them back with the group. Okay. And let's see. If anyone wishes to begin, they may unmute and mention something. Or I'm going to try to turn your videos back on for myself.
The discussion questions that you posted on the last slide, Michael, would you be able to put those into the chat box as well for everybody's reference?
Oh, yes.
Or then I can copy them over.
Right, okay. Oh. Okay. There's the chat. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to post those questions on the chat. There.
That's great, thanks.
And Joanna says, hi, I was just wondering if the concepts in Passive House have been applied to large buildings like hospitals. That's a great question. And yes, I can answer that. So the first Passive House hospital is, I think it's currently occupied. They finished construction in Frankfurt. So the Passive House Institute was working with the construction team and the design team to develop a Passive House hospital, which, I mean, since it's such a aggressive energy target, and hospitals have a very large energy consumption, particularly in ventilation, and so, well, so you can use heat recovery and find ways to optimize there. We wouldn't be able to use the typical heat recovery methods. I had some involvement in the Children's Hospital of Saskatchewan and understood that, you know, we weren't able to use heat wheels or other things that could offer higher efficiency, but would lead to contamination. So there are some very high efficiency glycol-based heat recovery systems that can be applied in hospitals. In fact, at the Children's Hospital, it went with a Swiss company that specializes in these very high efficiency hot water-based heat recovery systems for hospitals. So they're quite, the application is certainly specialized, and there's so much more equipment, and the internal heat gains are quite significant. And so what you'll end up with in a building like that is not necessarily a requirement for super insulation, but one that requires more efficiency for ventilation and very efficient cooling systems. And of course, considering all the medical standards required for design in hospitals to avoid microbial growth. And yeah, so that's a great way to interact if you'd like to post a question in the chat. And ML says, overall, do we know how Canadians are following through with taking advantage of the green energy incentives and rebate, home buyers and owner? There are certainly a wide range of green incentives and rebates. Some are significant and some aren't really that significant yet. And it certainly varies throughout the provinces. Certainly provinces such as British Columbia have more incentives and more policy in place for some things like energy efficiency. So when it comes to incentives, well, for example, PACE financing is the only program that's active in Canada. With that is in Halifax is the first one that has kind of a real PACE program, and I understand that they're quite successful with that, and they've kind of been the reason why PACE has been looked at by other cities. I mean, they kind of drew upon the PACE model in the States, where it's very successful in California, Connecticut, and other states, just leveraging the ability for cities to borrow at a low interest rate and allow that money to go into investments, local improvement charges that homeowners or businesses can put into energy retrofits. And so the city of Saskatoon, for example, has a goal of reducing in their low emissions community plan to reduce emissions by 80% by 2050. And so they came up with 40 actions, and one of them included a PACE program for commercial and for residential. They're starting the groundwork for that. And so the province has to allow it, the municipalities have to set it up, but that's less of it's not a subsidy or an incentive or a rebate, it's just financing, and it just makes it just covers the costs. And when it comes to incentives and rebates, like the ones that we're aware of, the Climate Action Incentive Fund is probably the largest one, where the federal government has 25% grants available for projects over $100,000. And those are going to small and medium-sized enterprises, healthcare, including healthcare. Yes, so there's money available for energy retrofit projects and solar renewables from the federal government of around 25% on big projects. So that was so important. That was so well. There's so much take up on that program that it meant that the provincial program for net metering in Saskatchewan was brought to a halt, or it filled up basically over in 1 month. And it's so the federal government's program was so much better than the provincial one that the provincial one ended. So just looking at the chat. Thanks, Joanna. And right, okay, so ML notes that I feel that as a general public, green energy efficient home building renovation seems pricey and unequitable. Yeah, I mean, that's a perception out there, and especially, and I think it comes from folks saying, I would like a green energy efficient home. They go to their contractor that they have gone to in the past, and that contractor says it's going to cost you 20% more or 30% more, because we don't really know how to do things. and so they could get training and then realize that it costs between 0 and 6% more to build this way, and that it's actually, from a operating cost perspective, we're saving money. We're not putting carbon taxes on folks that have to deal with these extra costs, or that are already struggling to meet ends. And yeah, so it's a similar discussion in electric vehicles. I mean, at least in the prairies, you go to a car dealership and ask for an electric vehicle, they tell you that you don't want it. And we do need to get more people trained and more enthusiasts in there promoting these things and able to show how it works. I should just read Joanna's comment because it is useful. It wasn't a question, that's why I didn't end up reading it, but because this is a breakout session. Joanna mentions that it's awesome that we have a passive house hospital, and it's interesting that the issues are specific to ventilation and cooling in hospitals. Okay. Judy asks, given so many of us live in stratas, could incentives be built into strata laws to move this agenda along? Wonderful. Yeah, stratas, or in other parts of the country, condominium corporations, as a structure for communities, really. And I mean, co-housing is often structured as a condominium corporation, sometimes as a condo, sometimes as a cooperative housing. Or I mean, in BC, they're all stratas, as far as I know. So co-housing is more of an intentional approach to development of condos. And you know, the legal structure at the end is a condo, so we can buy and sell our units, and we can develop equity in our homes. But we also designed a beautiful yard that has permaculture inspired landscaping and edible planting and rainwater harvesting. And whereas next door, a condo was built, and they have a parking lot with rainwater, it's sloped to the center so that they can capture the rain and do rainwater ponding. I mean, that's probably not an issue that you might have in Vancouver or in BC, but anyway, with co-housing, I think any condominium or strata could be built as we could move to have more inclusive and more inclusive design in our apartment buildings and townhouse developments and multifamily developments that are designing for community and designing for supportive living, and have, with co-housing, we say we want this. We want a guest room so that somebody can stay with us if they need to. We have that in another unit, and we have a common house that's shared space. That means that we don't all have to have that extra space, and it ultimately makes it more affordable for all of us. So whether we build new this way, or if we can retrofit homes to passive house, I think we could retrofit condominiums to co-housing, and this is a strategy that could really transform things in terms of how we manage things, how we invest in our infrastructure and the property that we own, and how we can build into it more socially supportive aspects. Thanks, Judy. So the next question, Cora notes that she's being pulled off to another meeting, but hopes she can join later. Chelsea says, this is more so from a social justice lens, but green technical and infrastructure might have implications for people who are currently working in non-green jobs, tradespeople working in fossil fuel industry, etc. As we work to phase out fossil fuels in similar industries, a plan needs to be in place to ensure workers are able to access affordable training opportunities if they need to adapt their careers. Also, we need to ensure that the implication of green technologies and infrastructure are creating good jobs and not precarious work. These potential implications on the workforce are not necessarily central to public health and may not even be viable concerns, but they may need to be considered and supported, as jobs with stable incomes and benefits are social determinants of health. Don't get me wrong, we need to phase out fossil fuels. However, I think as public health professionals, we need to consider the social justice and equity implications. absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Chelsea. And
this is
yeah.
Holly. My name's Holly,
you.
and I work for Northern Health Authority, and so I'm based out of Prince George, but we cover all of the north, which is highly resource intensive and very much speaks to what Chelsea alluded to in her comment there, where we have a lot of communities that are relying on fossil fuel and forestry. And we actually do have some passive house projects in Fort St. John. I know they started off just with a home, and now they're building like a multi-unit complex within that city. But I'm curious if you have other suggestions, because I work in healthy settings and work directly with local governments in terms of supporting healthy public policy development. And I wonder if are there any other sort of small initiatives to get communities on board who are heavily reliant on industry and resource so that they can make those small changes and kind of start it?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And this is also to Chelsea's point as well. And I think for me, the strongest one is blue hydrogen. Being able to take, well, right now, the transition is going to start with exactly what we're doing right now, and it'll be a gradient towards something, towards net zero, hopefully. And right now, so right now it's going to be business as usual, but how can we improve upon the way we do extraction? And can we leave the carbon behind? Can we do carbon capture with some of those systems? For example, Proton Technologies uses a system where they do in situ gasification of the oil reserve. So they inject oxygen into the oil reserve in a kind of a circular pattern, and essentially get combustion going underground, causing the temperature of the oil reservoir to rise, and that then causes pyrolysis, and hydrogen is broken off from the rest of the components. And they have a device with a membrane that only allows hydrogen up the well. The other products of combustion, hydrogen sulfide, carbon, are left behind. And they're finding they're doing this test in Saskatchewan, and they've just been approved for further work. And they're finding that they might be able to produce hydrogen at the lowest cost that anyone's really seen. And so that's going to be a non-renewable form of hydrogen that, from a sustainability perspective, I want to flag. But from a just transition perspective, this is a perfect solution for the oil and gas industry. The other solutions include bringing gas out of the ground as it is, there's a method to basically strip out the carbon as solid carbon that could be used for carbon black, graphite, carbon fiber manufacturing, and you're left with hydrogen. Once you have hydrogen, and it's not that we're talking about hydrogen fuel cells exclusively, that'll happen, and that'll happen over time. But we can take hydrogen and we can make clean fuels. There are systems being used in Europe to develop renewable methane and renewable ethanol that would displace fuels used in our gas grid or in our existing vehicles. Suncor has said that Suncor has invested in a company called LanzaJet, which is making renewable jet fuel from ethanol. So at first it'll be ethanol from corn and wheat, which is the least efficient ethanol, but there is ethanol that could be made from from hydrogen. If you could make clean hydrogen, you could make clean ethanol with a chemical process instead of a biological one, with sort of an agricultural one. We don't have to be going to displacing land use and agricultural land use for fuels. So this is about getting to 300% renewables is what I've read, and being able to export, getting to an export situation again for both blue hydrogen, green hydrogen. The Tokyo Olympics were supposed to happen this year. They're going to happen next year. They're running on green and blue hydrogen. This is the, as I pointed out, the U.S. They're calling upon ways for us to ramp up the chemical storage of renewables in a way that could be exported so a lot of oil and gas jobs are going to migrate into blue hydrogen. Many of them will migrate into green hydrogen because ultimately that is where we'll go. The blue hydrogen is a fixed quantity. It may last us hundreds of years, but it may not. It's not a forever solution like true sustainability would be. So from a just transition point of view, the energy companies have expressed that they're going net zero, Synovus, Suncor, and we just have to watch the technology that they implement. And this is all a win-win. I think there's so many opportunities for us to all work together on this, and it's no longer. It's unfortunate the political divisions that still emerge from this, and it's really a challenge that we all can step up to and work on.
Thank you.
Thanks, Holly. So yeah, we need to head in the right direction, and we need to give the financing to the right projects, and we need to be aware of what's coming and try to anticipate it. And yeah, so I think what we could do is if there are other notes that people wanted to make directly to the questions, then then Diana would be able to take those down. I think, Diana, did you want to change over to share your screen? Was that what we were needing to do?
I sure can, yes.
Okay.
We'll say it's quite a lengthy sheet by now, so we'll have to consolidate those few points later. So here we are. Here were the 4 questions. Can you see that okay?
Yeah, that looks great.
Okay. So I've gone through some of the questions you've already answered. I've just taken out some notes. Yeah. I might copy these further down just to have them on the same page.
Wow, thank you. They're all. Great. Yeah, so happy to take any other thoughts. And we've got, it was 50 minutes. It was till 12:20, I think, and then a break, and then coming back and sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're just trying to figure out ways to get financing for projects, and where in some jurisdictions they're making a code, the building code across Canada. They've expressed their intention to work towards net zero ready in all buildings by 2030, and so that's in Europe they had expressed that to meet that by 2020. So many European countries actually are hitting that now, right, as we speak. But Canada, we're headed towards 2030. BC step code lays out a path to hit net zero by 2030. Net zero ready buildings as code by 2030. So if we can build, you know, so if we can build net zero houses and net zero condos and stratas, and if we can build net zero communities, you know, we can build a whole country that's net zero, a whole planet. And I mean, it's from the discussion where sometimes we look at individual consumption or a household's energy use, what's coming into a household in terms of products and you know, their embodied carbon, and we know that oil and gas, the industry in itself is responsible for a lot of emissions. And you know, so if we were to sometimes our own individual actions aren't as much of a change as it would be as if we were to say, let's still use fossil energy, but we'll only use hydrogen out of it. And you know, that could be quite transformative. Okay, well, we've got quite a bit there, and anyone wants to share anything else, very welcome to. Okay, is there another point here? Okay, Joanna, just to address some of the questions, I think that an area that is so important is industry, and an ally that we have to figure out how to work with are certain governments. This feels monumental to myself, especially living in Alberta right now. Can you comment on the changes in communities as residential changes versus changes in industry? Interesting. I guess I spoke about that a little bit a second ago, but yeah, I guess I should talk about it more. Well, so residential changes versus changes to industry. Yeah, there are systemic, really, changes to the energy system that can happen at an industrial level, and it seems like we want to bring everyone along to sustainability at the pace that they're comfortable with, and sometimes that can be hard. And I think there's a lot of assets that could be stranded, or people are threatening that, you know, stranded assets or lost value. You know, if we just said, let's stop doing oil and gas right now. Well, the reality is that that's not going to happen immediately. If you look, what it showed for emissions for US, of course, it's going to go up in the next few years as we recover from COVID, but it's going to have to come down ultimately. And we can talk about that just transition and offer an authentic path. I think there's been some challenges when you say, let's go 100% renewables, but all you can imagine is wind turbines or maybe some more snow on a solar panel. Like, yeah, our solar panels do not produce as much energy in the winter as they do in the summer. And that's why there's this need for energy storage. And why, in my mind, it's the concept that can say, well, I put fuel in my car, it takes a few minutes to do that, and I can drive for hundreds of kilometers. And that's the same kind of functionality that we can offer with 100% renewable clean fuels, but we have to manufacture them from renewable energy in the first place. And it is a challenge to see that if it's not in front of us. And it's the requirement, it's the need now to get some demonstration projects out there to show that, to get some clean financing, get some investments into these sorts of projects, so that people can see. There's a $20 megawatt power to gas project being built in Ontario by the gas company there, and they so they'll be producing hydrogen from renewable electricity, and being able to put that into the grid, into their gas grid, and decarbonize some of their, I think it's in Markham. There's an initiative here in BC by a group to build a power to gas facility to make hydrogen and maybe eventually renewable methane to decarbonize gas from using wind turbines, hydroelectric, and basically this electrolyzer system to split water into hydrogen. And so I think a lot of those working in oil and gas right now are going to, with the price that it is at right now, I think there's going to be a lot of diversification into other streams, other industries. There's a lot going on with geothermal actually in Saskatchewan and in Alberta, where not as much for home heating. We're doing a lot more air source heat pumps now, but for energy production, basically taking low-grade heat out of the ground, running it through a turbine, and producing electricity from this, from deep wells, sometimes existing wells. So that's actually technology that's more advanced than the proton technology's blue hydrogen concept that I was talking about, and that's being explored. Oil companies, former oil companies, are promoting a current geothermal group right now that's trying to get attention, and so it's interesting where the industry can go from here. There's going to be a lot of new opportunities. So some of the themes that we've been talking about, equity in terms of access to energy efficient buildings, but equity in terms of transition from fossil energy to renewable energy and sustainable energy, and noting that it's more complicated than what's often being presented to us. Okay, well, it's a few more minutes, and then I think we'll be heading back to the main room. So happy to take any other thoughts. We could add them here, or thanks for the opportunity to chat with you today and share some of the things that I'm passionate about. And I see a lot of important things happening. Oh, I was mentioned forestry is very important. Absolutely. It's interesting to see what's being done with the Forestry Stewardship Council. We need to be using sustainable forestry. So we're going to be building massive buildings out of wood. We should be building them out of sustainable wood. So lots of aspects that we can consider. Yeah, Diana mentions that we need to consolidate 3 points and report back and select who would present that. Yeah, I mean, a sustainable, just, healthy, just energy system is one that is that includes a just transition. So that is an equitable one. So that is a strong point here. You can hold that.
Sorry, which one? Can you just repeat that? I was reading some of the text.
Oh, sorry. It's just this last line that you have is the equity in terms of transition to renewables is a major point.
Thanks. Something that stood out to me from the discussion was the point you made about how if people want to build energy efficient homes, they need to be more people trained, and kind of not necessarily selling that idea, but I guess to an extent that is what they would do, and also point out the long-term efficiency, and that you mentioned that there is not enough of that happening.
Sure. Yeah, I think so. Taking, yeah, yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, energy efficient ways of building and education on that to both property owners and homeowners and builders, so that the communication, that they can have that conversation and they have the language to have that conversation. And if I would make a point, it would be collaborative development, whether it's cooperatives or co-housing, figuring out ways that we can group together and make the systems that we need, create the systems that we need to provide financing, to provide construction, to get these built, and making that available to everyone. Great. Well, thanks everyone. And yeah, so in a minute we'll be heading back. So enjoy the rest of your conference, and I'll hope to see you around.
Thanks, Michael. Stop the share, I think. Actually, the other thing that I'm thinking of is related to Holly's point about rural and remote communities also, and the transitions that our energy companies may or may not undergo. And I live in Prince George as well, so this resonates with me, Holly, and rural, indigenous, and remote communities, I think really are so far away from these kinds of energy transition building opportunities that it's really hard to envision how this could pan out in the north. And the energy route is an interesting one that I hadn't considered that much, because it seems like we're stuck in this pattern still of oil and gas extraction here in the north and just getting it out of the ground as quickly as we can. So it's interesting the potential avenues other I guess energy industries are maybe pursuing in Alberta more so, and to hear about that. I haven't heard any of that here in BC so much. Yeah, anyway, that's more of a comment, I guess.
No, thanks. Lots of biomass energy opportunities in forestry locations. Northern, well, most of British Columbia, northern Saskatchewan, there's some biomass plants being thought up. Yeah, we just as our other costs become greater, we'll start to see more and more of this. I mean, wind energy is the cheapest form of electricity at the moment. Yeah, it was a good Netflix video series is Islands of the Future. Been enjoying that. They've got some wind energy cooperatives on far-flung islands. It's nice to go on a trip while we're stuck at home. Some nice imagery and filming also. Islands of the Future is what it's called.
I will put that in the notes.